I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Pray with me. Lord, we thank you for this opportunity we have to come together tonight and discuss these issues for the district. Lord, please give each and every person here wisdom in the decisions that we make. May we always act in the best interest of the students and the staff. We ask in Jesus' name. Amen. Next item on the agenda is calling this meeting to order. We'll call it order at 6 p.m. Note we do have a quorum present, and the agenda was posted in a timely fashion. Next item is public comments. Ms. Hawley, we have anyone signed up? We'll move on. Discuss May 6, 2023 joint election options.
As we look forward to our elections coming up in May, we've talked about this before. We're currently looking at partnering with Bowie County to hold us. We had this discussion last year, but Bowie County would hold all of our election, be able to help send out notices, conduct the election, give us our election officers. For this election, the main voting places would certainly be in Bowie County. They have places in Texarkana, and they have agreed to allow us to have the First Baptist Church on election day, and then also for early voting, we can contract through an MOU with them to have early voting location here at Maud, which would also be at the First Baptist Church Life Center. So that'll be on our next meeting. We'll be presenting a MOU with Bowie County for that election, but want to just kind of remind everybody that's changed a little bit over the years since the last time we've hosted or held a school election, since we haven't had one the last several years.
Anything else? Any questions on that? Next item is order the school board election for May 6, 2023.
We have two positions that'll be up. We have position 4, which is R.J. Norris' position, and position 5, which is currently held by Mr. Melford Pierce. We need to order that school board election for May 6, 2023 for those two positions.
All right, any questions or discussion? We have a motion to order the school board election for May 6, 2023.
I'll make a motion to order the school board election for May 6, 2023.
We have a motion. We have a second. Motion by Eric.
Second.
Second by Ryan. All in favor, raise your right hand. Passes unanimously. Discussion of facility committee recommendations and potential May 23 bond election.
We discussed this at our last board meeting, but just a kind of recap of what we've looked at. We have some folks from WRA out here in the crowd with us today, with our architect firm. I'm going to pull up our last committee meetings PowerPoint, and we'll go down to the recommendations. We looked at these previously. Our facility committee started meeting. Actually, we were looking at the calendar today. 1 year ago was the first meeting that our facility committee had. It was just in this month in February. We as a board met back in January to start looking at facility recommendations and things that we needed to move forward. Our facility committee met and came up with 4 major priorities. And after pulling together the cost of those, they came to this recommendation that we try to do these 3 items, which is to construct a new cafetorium where this number 1 is, to come back and renovate our current cafetorium into a band hall, and then the addition of a traffic control road with additional parking places here in those areas. The 4 main things that I really wanted to look at was the functionality of the cafeteria, the fact that our restrooms, ADA, it's not large enough to host most of the events that we have. Afterwards, there was concerns on that, and we had concerns on fitting the number of students that we had in the cafeteria. The band hall, certainly know that's been an issue of not being able to function well with the low roofs. There's really struggle with storage and fitting our entire band into it. And then certainly the safety concerns of traffic having to constantly drive through students as it currently sits as we move through here. So those were the big items that the committee felt like this could address. The total estimated cost that WRA put together, they worked with Ideal Construction here in Texarkana. The total cost that we came up with was just under $8.2 million for that construction project. Is anybody, I know we've had this discussion now before, but just wanted to kind of remind everybody kind of what we looked at. And then we can talk, if there's no questions on the actual construction piece, we can certainly talk about the financial piece next.
Any questions or discussion?
The only questions I got
Yes,
is on our construction place, like, we still, you know, if it gets approved and whatever, we go into it, we can still tweak a few things, right? Like roadway,
Absolutely.
where it comes out, this and that.
Would y'all, do you mind, I mean, just give us an idea of if we proceed with this and this is approved, kind of what the next steps in the process would be after a approval of the building project?
After it gets approved, or let's say the bond, it passes, we would immediately get started on laying this out, drawing up the plans. We can work with Ideal Construction on creating what we call alternates. So it would be basically, if you wanted additional parking or some other things done around the campus, we can draw that up and Ideal can bid that and get numbers for it. And if it comes within under budget, then it gets accepted. If not, it's something that we would have ready to go for future planning.
So certainly the next stage after approval would be, we'd go into design phase, and that's where we'd actually really sit down and start drilling down exactly what each one of these would look like. We've got a rough draw of that road, for example, that may not, it's not anywhere where it may exactly be, that may be moved. We certainly have those abilities too, but the general idea is this. So once we sit down, we certainly start looking at, we'll start taking soil samples and ground samples, and we'll start getting a much better idea. There's certainly still time to move and change any of that. We can redirect it. Right now, we've not sat down and really designed, here's exactly what the band hall is going to have in that or those. We just have general ideas of what a band hall for this size would cost. And of course, any of those decisions, once we get to those design phases, does come back through school board, as well as depending on, as we move forward, we'll talk about construction procurement and what methods we have. There's certainly decisions this board would have to make on how we can do that and how much control and oversight we would have. So those will be discussions as we move forward, we certainly can have. But the design phase will be the next big phase. Once the design is approved, then we would start moving into the actual construction phase. Is that correct?
Correct. And just so everyone knows on the board, as we go through that process, we will come before all of you with the design phase at the end of that, show you our renderings, things like that, get your approval before we move forward into the construction documents, and then update you at 50%, 75%, and then also at 100%, so that we can release those to Ideal Construction.
Thank you. Any other questions or discussion? Hearing none, next item, consider and possible action to approve and adopt an order authorizing.
Do you want to, we did the construction piece, do you want to do finance? Go through numbers first before we actually order?
Is that part of 6? Okay.
That's part of the discussion of
sorry.
the potential May election. We'll talk about the finance piece of that. We just wanted to kind of make sure there was no other on the construction piece.
Gotcha.
So this is, like we said before, this is a rough,
Yes,
just a rough guess, and that some of the things could change.
certainly could. What we did is they took the square footage of what we're looking at, both new build plus remodel, and had Ideal really work with them here for Texarkana market of what we feel like per square foot that would be, and that's kind of what we came up with these costs, as well as the soft costs that were added, which would include engineering fees, architect fees, all those fees, as well as some furniture and fittings by a percentage. I believe we were looking at 15% on top of the actual building costs is what we looked at for those soft costs. And then the total cost that we look at of that 8.2 is adjusted for inflation. As we build a cafeteria, we can't start the renovations on the next piece probably until that following year for that band hall, until we can move out of it. That inflation was built into the estimated of that 8.2 million. We looked at, certainly looked at these finance numbers previously as well. Let's kind of do a quick review. Overall, This is just kind of a history of where our tax rate started back in '04. Total tax rate almost at 1.4. You can see over the last 20 years, we've certainly decreased and compressed that tax rate down here to where we currently are, was just under $1 of our tax rate. That's kind of an idea of where our property values have increased over time. We've certainly seen here in the last several years that we started to see our property values certainly has increased as we've seen that across the state of Texas. What we would look at for this project is a $6.5 million bond. We would use cash to make up the difference in that 8.2. Using current numbers, the most current that we have as of today, what we would look at is an increase on our INS tax rate of 22 cents. And here are some estimated numbers of home values, annual increases, and then monthly increases. The average home value for Maud ISD is $91,610, and that's this one here at $946 a month. And he went ahead and took this all the way out to a $500,000 home, where we can see we would go up to approximately $84 tax increase to that time. That's given current legislation, current law, current rates.
Yeah, important to also note is that we didn't assume any growth in the district value when running these numbers, so there's no assumption that you would grow even $1 more, so you can afford this bond at 22 cents should your values not increase another dime over the life of the bond. So any increase in value would allow you to either have additional capacity in the future or potentially reduce that tax rate over time.
So every year when we adopt our INS rate, if the tax values of our district go up, then you have an opportunity to lower your tax rate, or you have the opportunity to keep that tax rate where it is, to generate either more capacity. And we look at that every year. And as we saw over the past 20 years, our INS rate has fluctuated very, very little, as our property values really hasn't fluctuated much over that time either. Any other discussion questions on this chart before we move on?
So, make sure I understand what he just said.
Yep.
As the property values go up, the tax rate increase could go down, or we could generate more revenue to pay it off quicker. Is that what you're
Yes, sir.
saying?
Sure.
Is that what you're saying?
That's correct.
Just making sure that I'm tracking here.
Absolutely.
So my $84 a month will go down.
Good.
It's still gonna be $84 a month, it's just gonna be, the rate will be lower. Like the amount's gonna be the same.
Yeah, and as this, if this rate does reduce due to property value increase over time, then certainly those numbers can fluctuate as we do reduce rates. There's certainly discussions in the legislature currently, and this is not included in that, of compressing tax rates where you may not see as big one. But that's not a guarantee. We don't know what the legislature is ever going to do. But this is giving current law, current rates, what we think would be the tax impact at 6.5. Now, if rates move in our favor, that can certainly change. We could either generate more money or less tax increase if rates continue to move. If we were to pass a bond in May, we would be selling these sometime in September.
You would sell probably around July and get the money in your account around the end of August.
So we have those opportunities that we can look at. If the rates continue to go in our favor, then we certainly may be able to do better, or it may be exactly the same. Those certainly can fluctuate the whole way up until we do sell. Is that a correct statement?
That's correct, and then also note the numbers we've run include a pretty healthy amount of interest rate cushion, just to be conservative. And so, in reality, more than likely, when you do price the bonds, the actual interest rate will be lower than what we're predicting here.
Yeah, that'd be lower today than what we saw this week.
And two, once we approve this is a question, not a statement, I'm an assumption. If we're just doing the road and cafeteria, say 1 year, we can sell just enough bonds to get that money then, and we could issue,
Absolutely.
do a second issue with potentially even lower rates, or we would have the ability to do it quicker.
Yes, you're under no obligation to issue the entire amount at one time. You could issue just what you need for a single project in any given year. That amount will remain authorized, the remaining balance of the 6.5 for a period of 10 years. So.
Thank you.
And then if we were to able to come in and have success and come under that construction price, then we certainly have the opportunity not to sell full bonds if the board chose not to.
That's correct.
Or some of that.
And how would that, what would happen there? It would just,
We will only, the rates that we would charge would only be enough to pay for what we sold.
so the rates would go down.
It's a possibility. Certainly, there's certainly options. So when we're looking at this, there's certainly options as a board, and we move forward, we have the opportunity to make some other decisions with. I know that was a question we had at a previous board meeting.
One other question on that.
Yes, sir.
So from the time, let's say we did hold off, from the time we say we need the more money, we tell you to issue the more bonds, what's the time horizon? How long in advance do we need to do this before we have money?
Typical sale from sort of inception of getting the working group together, which should be the financial advisor, us, the lawyers, underwriters and all that. Typically around 3 months. That gives some time for document circulation, marketing of the bonds to investors. There's a sale, then there's around a 30-day period that documents flow through the Attorney General before the district gets the money. So in this case, if you pass the bond successfully in May, we would get started right away, should you choose to sell the bonds immediately after the election. And as I said, it would be around August before the bonds closed and the $6.5 million hit the district's construction account.
The rates are set at the time those are sold, which are probably around August.
The rates will be set, there's a pricing day, which is when the underwriters, who will be the purchaser of the bonds, we go back and forth with them. We are on your side of the table, arguing on your behalf for the lowest interest rate possible. The underwriters then take that, they market those bonds to investors, and those interest rates are set on that day, and so they will not change between the pricing day and the closing day. The closing day, or the closing period between pricing and closing and delivery of the funds is for the Attorney General to review the transaction, make sure all the legal things have been checked off, the bond's tax exempt and all that stuff like that. So.
Actually quicker than I thought. Thanks.
Interesting. Ron, you had a question, or you were going to say something just a minute ago.
I don't. Live Oak's fees, are they calculated completely into this? Or does
They
it
are,
come out of that
yes.
6.5 right off the top?
No, so the 6.5 the 6.5 is what you will be receiving in your account. Our fees, lawyer fees, rating agency, things like that are paid for from bond proceeds. So the $6.5 million that you go out for with this election, no fees come out of that amount. The full $6.5 million is delivered to the district. Any fees charged by third-party service providers are paid for out of additional bond proceeds.
This is what we're looking at
What are
here.
typical fees?
Yeah.
The fees are normally charged on kind of a per bond basis, so there'll be a base fee and then say, $3 per bond, which would be $1,000 per bond. A fee, like our typical fee for $6.5 million is probably in the $50,000 range. Lawyer fees, I would say is similar. If you have a bond counsel retained, they might charge you an election fee. We do not charge an election fee for work done on the election planning side. And then, of course, costs for architect and building and all that, that does come out of funds from the...
Yeah, that would make sense. I just I wasn't clear on how y'all got yours.
So I mean, we're already up to 100 right there.
We're at 100. So you're saying that's additional bonds. So if we issue 6.5, it's 6.6 or?
No, out of 6.5, we're paying him 100 grand.
So we were issued up, he said if we issued a 6.5, we got 6.5.
That's correct, yeah. The $6.5 million that you go out for the election, that is what you will receive. No fees come out of that money. So you're not, you wouldn't go out for 6.6 to pay for 6.5 plus 100.
Okay.
There's some bond math involved where interest rates, your bonds can sell at a premium. Essentially, investors are paying more for a bond due to the tax exempt nature, the creditworthiness of the school, things like that. And so in reality, you will more than likely issue less than $6.5 million, but due to premium generation, you will receive $6.5 million in your account. And so fees are just paid for out of bond proceeds.
Are those fees in our budget? Do we figure in the fees in the budget, or is that just straight up building cost?
Yeah, that has all the percentage estimates for soft costs, which would be all the additional costs.
Like, it's fees he's talking about, all the architect fees.
They receive commissions off the sale, there's
There's other ways.
Yeah, so important to know, yeah, the numbers that we've run include all estimates of cost, things like that.
Okay.
Yeah, so there's no
no additional fees.
additional budgeting that would need to be done. All of our numbers include all of the estimates of
I think,
fees.
I think the T-high bond started out about a 102 per hundred. This reason, I don't know if y'all were involved with that at all.
So, yeah, sure.
Texas High just did a bond issue, TISD. I think theirs started out about 102, they were selling at a $2 premium.
Yes, yeah, we see that a lot. Typically, we've just we're wrapping up some sales that passed in November. And almost all of those bonds sold at a fairly large premium. So the actual par amount, which is the principal repayment the district will make, is less than the project deposit you will receive. And that's due to premium generation bond math, essentially.
I was thinking those came out about 4.5% too, so a lot better than what we're thinking on.
Yeah, we've seen south of 4.5% recently. Rates have been going down and stabilizing, so.
That's a good thing. Thank you.
Yes.
I remember my question. So at the 6.5, am I correct? I know we talked about it a while ago, I can't, state subsidizing half of that?
That's correct, yeah. There's a formulation based on the district's average daily attendance.
Roughly half.
It's at $35 per student per penny of taxing effort, up to 29 cents. So you see your current rate plus the 22, I think takes you to 26 cents and change. So you would be receiving state aid on that number, and right there on this tax impact we have.
So I can't
State
see
aid
that.
here.
Yes,
So
sir.
what's
So
that?
here's, can you read that? So 105,000 is going to be our state aid on an annual basis. I guess the total payments right here, 427,000 for the total annual payment. Maud ISD will generate 191,000 of that, and the state currently under current law will
That's
pay
right.
205,000 of that. Now, what we saw on the previous page as far as how it would impact us as taxpayers, that's what we would see. But bottom line payment, when Maud ISD tried to check, 191,000 is coming from our community, 200,000 and some change is coming from the other,
The rest of our community.
from the state.
We're paying 191, they're paying
205. And that certainly can change depending on tax values.
That can, yeah, it is based on a formula of tax values in ADA. So as ADA changes, the tax value changes.
Some of that can change, but right now for the bond we currently have, that percentage has been pretty steady, where the state's paying the majority of our annual payment.
hard to beat free money.
I like free.
I like free money.
This is just kind of looking at, as we move forward, this dark line is what our current INS is. This would kind of give us what the next section of that would be if we adopted into it. We've talked about this, that in that 2030, 31 area would be a time frame that we would pay off the 4-cent bond we currently have, as well as we've got those QZAP loans, the M&O notes that we could pay off during that time would be the next phase to try to look at a possibility of a phase 2, which would give us some capacity in our bonding. And I think we're going to set this up where it will give us the most flexibility during that 8-year to 10-year period as far as more capacity to generate funds if we were to look at the next project of the high school. Anything else that we haven't covered?
No, I think that was great. I'm happy to answer any additional questions. But as you mentioned, yeah, we would structure whatever amount of bond you choose to go out for following, hopefully, the successful election in a way that would allow you to grow into more capacity in that kind of 2030 period that we talked about, maybe for the phase 2.
But those bonds have a 10-year call feature.
They do, yes, sir.
In case we came across a lot of money, that's the earliest we could pay them. Which would be a great problem to have.
Yeah. Values keep going up, that's correct.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
I do believe that would be, unless anyone else has any other questions, that's all the discussion that our presentation we had.
We'll do with number 6. Fairfax.
We would be through with number 6 unless there's a question.
Very good. All right. Good. Now we're on 7, right?
Yes, sir.
All right. Consider and possible action to approve and adopt an order authorizing the Board of Trustees of the Lamont Independent School District to call a bond election to be held within said district, making provisions for the conduct and giving of notice of the election, and providing for any other provisions related thereto.
This motion would approve an order prepared by Powell Law Group to call $6.5 million in bonds for the construction, renovation, and improvement of facilities at Maude ISD. So to proceed that way, we need that motion, a second and a vote.
That would be the agenda item 5 order of the school board. This one right here. Any,
No, number 7, just as it's written on there.
any question or discussion? Do we have a motion? So a motion to approve and adopt an order authorizing the Board of Trustees to call a bond election held within the district.
I'll make a motion.
We have a motion by Terry. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by RJ. All in favor, raise your right hand. All opposed, like sign. Well, you were,
I'm for it.
okay. It is unanimous.
Next is the short one.
Number 8, consider and possible action to approve a resolution retaining the law firms of Powell Law Group and Haynes and Boone to provide specialized legal services in connection with the issuance of public securities by the district, finding that PLG and HB are competent and experienced in handling such issuance of public securities, having handled such matters for more than a decade in the state of Texas, finding that such legal services required specialized expertise and experience in state and federal laws governing the issuance of public securities and therefore cannot be adequately performed by the attorneys and supporting personnel of the district. Such legal services cannot be reasonably obtained from attorneys in private practice under a contract providing for the payment of hourly fees without contingency, because the district would not be obligated to pay any legal fees unless the public securities are approved and actually issued, and entering into a contingent fee contract with PLG and HB to serve as co-bond counsel is in the best interest of the residents of this district, because PLG and HB will only be paid in the event that the public securities are actually issued and all matters related thereto. That was written by the attorney.
100%.
Hey, I missed so you did.
Lawyer wrote that.
What's the film?
Okay.
I'll repeat it if you like.
So this action would be basically hiring Powell Law Group and Haynes and Boone as bond counsels to help assist the district if the bond is passed, and all fees will be contingent upon the passing of the bond.
Thanks for translating. What could I have read that?
Could have done that.
Any other questions?
With
or-
that motion,
You ain't gonna talk about it, Good, okay. I'm gonna, make a motion to approve a resolution retaining the law firms of Powell Law Group, LLP, and Haynes and Boone's LLP to provide specialized legal services in connection with the issuance of public securities by the district.
We have a motion.
I have a motion.
We have a motion. We have a motion. We have a second. A second by David. All in favor, raise your right hand. It passes unanimously. Next item on the agenda is adjournment. We have a motion.
I'll make that motion.
We have a second.
I'll say.
Second by Terry. All in favor, raise your right hand. This meeting is adjourned. Here's some, there'll be some discussion. Unofficial.
we have a nice little ethics flyer that y'all can look over on what you can and cannot do now